Hey, welcome to today's podcast. I'm David F. Haas. You listen to the David F. Haas podcast. I'm here again for part two with my good buddy, Mickey Pittman. Mickey, thanks for coming on for part two of this thing.
Yeah, glad to be here. Let's roll.
Yeah, man. So in part one, we talked about this discovery that Mickey and I made about that leadership requires two elements. It requires the element of, hey, these are the tactics and the tools that makes a great leader. And, this is Mickey's forte, where he comes in because he's been working in leadership for so long. But the other element of it is that we need to uncover, what is holding us back from maximizing our potential. And that's kind of where I come in with my letting go school, and I'm the letting go coach. So we kind of picked that apart on the first podcast. But today we want to really get into some nitty gritty about actually what makes a great leader. And I think this is what so many companies struggle with. And especially the mom and pops trying to expand, they realize that they've spread themselves too thin and they weren't able to replicate what it is that they were doing. But then it also goes to, big corporations once, that primary figure is removed, like the CEO. The company gets so big that there's the CEO is no longer accessible to the regular employees, and so you miss this element of being able to let it kind of run ideas by the boss, because the company has grown too big to do that. And yeah, sure, they have a manager above them, but they lose that touch. So let's just kind of get into this, Mickey, and let's just talk about what it is that you think, maybe start with just one point. And what is it that you think that, makes a great leader? And then we'll kind of go back and forth from there.
Yeah. So I think number one, and I think a lot of the kind of known world agrees with this statement, leadership is influence. And so specifically in the military context, from a Ranger handbook or what have you, we would say that leadership is influence, specifically influencing others to accomplish a mission, task, or purpose. So leadership is about getting others to accomplish a goal that directs a whole organization, toward a mission set or prize.
Yeah, and I think one thing we touched on before, I think on the first podcast, before we did this part 1, 2, 3, we talked about this word empowerment, and reframing the word leadership with empowerment, because there's, leadership kind of gets misconstrued with having people underneath you. And it's so much more than that. It's about having people underneath you that are effective for you and that also respect you as a human being. And I'm personally kind of I'm going through this a little bit because I had stepped away from a company that I owned, really successful company that I owned for a long time, and I kind of just plopped a manager in place and said, okay, you go at it, and didn't really give him any leadership. And now I've been reflecting, and partly because of meeting you, I've been reflecting on the fact that, wow, there's a lot that I didn't give him to succeed, So, for me, my technique is a little bit different maybe than yours, Mickey, but I basically was, I sit in meditation and I'm basically saying, what is it that really makes a good leader? And it came to me in a flash, it was just being a good person and being kind and compassionate and really caring about who these people are as people and building relationships with them, and there's companies that you can pick out with pinpoint accuracy whether they have a good leader or not, and it's all just based on the attitude of the staff. And the staff take on the attitude of the leader. And if the leader is unmotivated, lackluster, feeling like he hates his job, feeling he's just punching the clock, well, then that's gonna trickle down to all the staff, and then that's gonna trickle down to the customer, right? And then that's when you're gonna notice it. But if the leader is upbeat, motivated, kind, considerate, compassionate, respectful, then that's also gonna come out. So really. For me, it was about becoming a better leader. One of the things that I had to remove was this block of being the serious business owner, and starting to really build relationships with people. Not because I want them to perform for me, because I really want to know about them. And the question that came to me was is basically saying how can I help them? It's becoming really clear to me recently, because I'm in the process of the sale of my business. It's I employ 40 people. And it's like, these are 40 people that rely on me to like pay their bills, pay their rent, and it's like, whoa, I'm like, this is a responsibility that I've taken on, and I want to make sure that those 40 people that are a part, like I'm giving them my money for their services. I want to make sure that they're happy,
Sure.
and you can't do that if you don't know who they truly are.
Right. And it's even more important today. I mean, if you look, almost every business headline has something to do with the gig economy and now the retirement economy and this wave of people just walking away from jobs. And we're in a crazy world where there's actually way more jobs than people to fill those jobs, right? And so workers have the ability to choose. And I think a lot of business owners, a lot of managers just aren't used to that. And quite frankly, I think sometimes even using the term manager is a poor choice of words. You manage systems, but you lead people. And so a lot of times people forget about that law of attraction. But again, it's going to be a lot more important. So I think when you talk about some of the work you do in the Letting Go School, really what we're talking about is developing the person that can use the law of attraction in such a way that people want to work for them. John Maxwell says it's the difference between positional leadership and personhood, right? And so positional leadership is when you say, I'm the boss, you follow me. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Personhood is when someone says, yeah, you're my boss, but I would follow you even if you didn't pay me, right? And it goes way beyond transactional leadership. And I think in this century, in this job market, right, in this day and age of competition, more important than ever.
Yeah. And I think the one thing too is that you got to get out of the mindset of getting, a lot of people want to become a better leader or want better leaders within their organization so that they can get better quality products or that they can get more customers, they can get more sales. But that mindset literally has to kind of like go out the window because people are going to read right through it. I have this saying that you can't bullshit the universe, right? And so people see that your intention is just to be their friend so that you will perform for them. They're going to see right through it, right? So the intention really has to be to develop people so that they can like live their best lives, right? And I think you mentioned this to me before. It's like, you really want to help people. Like you said, my kind of like mantra is like, I just help people as much as I can, and if I keep doing that, good things happen. And I think if you had that same mindset, a real simple concept, you talk about what makes a good leader. It's like if you just really showed up for your employees and asked, how can I help you? And genuinely really wanted to help them become better people, even if that meant they might leave your company, right? Then be there for them. And when they really, truly believe that you want the best for them, even if that means them leaving you, then like you say, they're gonna follow you, even if you're not paying them.
That's right. Yeah. And, it's we own a series of restaurants. One of my ownership teams does, and we can't keep people forever. And sometimes restaurants don't pay people, to stay 30 years at a career, maybe at the management level or leadership level, sure. But the guy or gal that comes in and is a cook or a server or whatever, they're not going to be able to survive on those wages forever. It's a great starting job. But what we do is we develop them as people. We serve them first. And what we found is it doesn't matter if they leave in 3 to 5 years. If they go to a bank down the road or another store, someone's going to say, man, you really are good at this. You understand people. Where did you learn that? They're like, well, actually, I learned it back at this restaurant. And yeah, in fact, the bank didn't teach me or this business didn't teach me. If you want to become a leader, you need to go down the road and find those guys, right? And so that sort of law of attraction, I think, by serving others first is really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And that law of attraction definitely is the idea of like, putting others first is what's going to attract more people to you, right? As opposed to just trying to get more production or better quality service or whatever it is. It's a completely different intention, and we are always pulled by our intention and the underlying intention. If we don't become clear on what our intention is, this is like a lot of what I help people do, right? Is I help people get clear and aligned with their true self, so in our true nature, we are like giving, loving, compassionate people, but we have become programmed to believe that, we need to get more money, we need to get a better house, bigger job, more promotions, whatever, in order to be fulfilled. And so we get wrapped up in getting. And when you're in getting mode, you basically essentially everything is kind of forced, right? But what you're talking about is developing people from a place of giving. And I think that's, if we have that intention, then we're going to be pulled by that intention, and we're going to develop great leaders. And then ultimately too, the second element of this thing is about helping the individual grow as a person, So if you want to become a better leader yourself, and you're listening to the podcast here, the questions that you need to be asking aren't so much about, how can I get more production out of my staff? It's all about what am I holding on to myself, So let me give my own personal example. Is like, I got to this point where I was so full of desire to like earn more money that I like was in this head down mode, like just grinding and hustling. And I would show up to work every day, and I would just like not talk to people. And, I was known as kind of like the miserable guy, right? Because I was just so focused on trying to get ahead. I was in this mindset of sacrificing and everything. Like, I'm not going to have fun until I make money. And, my staff picked up on that. And because of that, I was like this grumpy boss, And so one of the things that I needed to let go of was my desire for money, right? Is learning to let go of that. Actually, it ended up bringing money into my life by letting that desire go. But also, I started enjoying life more. I just started being happier. And as I became happier, and as I started, getting more joy out of my life, naturally, people were drawn to that, right? And so then I began to attract more customers. I began to be able to retain staff longer, all of these types of things. So it was about doing the inner work that kind of naturally moved me into good leadership. Where I missed the bus or missed the boat was when I was leading it, I think I had a great relationship with all my staff, and they respected me, and they would go to bat for me, just like we talked about. But then when I stepped away, and I had to replace myself with a general manager, I dropped the boat on kind of like leading him, or dropped the ball on leading him, right? So that's where I struggled, and that's where now I'm recognizing that even there, the same principle applied. There was like a lack of awareness within me that I needed to like foster a relationship with him, right? And that is what ended up creating the issues within the company.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to that idea of influencing others, and the question is, how do you do it, right? And so we talked about serving others, serving first. I think that's really important. I think another thing that's really important is truth. Some people call it candor, right? It's just this being honest and open about life. And as a leader, you're not going to have the ability to bring candor into a conversation if you haven't built a relationship, right? And so you can be the boss that no one likes and just kind of like what you talked about, just get stuff done. But then all of a sudden, that's basically just writing checks out of someone's account. You're not putting deposits in. And when it comes time to have a real conversation, if you've only made withdrawals and haven't made any deposits, right, it's not going to go well. People are going to quit. They're going to walk out. They're going to go get another job because you haven't earned the right. And so a paycheck in 2021 doesn't give you, whether you think it should or not, right, doesn't give you the right to speak freely into someone's life.
Yeah.
It's just not where we are in the world.
100%.
You have to earn that today. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what I was just thinking is like, I was a while back, I was kind of creating a side company with a buddy of mine. And like the way our meetings went were like, we would hang out for the first 20 minutes, just like shoot the shit. What'd you do this weekend or whatever, And then we would get into the business. It was like, almost like, hey, this is going to be fun for us to get together and meet. Whereas my meetings with my manager over the years turned into very like, okay, well, what's happening? Like, what do we need to change? What do we need to do? There was none of that relationship building. There was no motivation. There was no bond there, and we became very disconnected, So, and a lot of that had to do with what I had to let go of. And, a big thing for me was like learning to let go of control and to find the proper ways to empower the people, and then the other thing is, I think that makes a great leader is, so let's just say we've identified the first one, which is you got to build relationships with these people, and really genuinely want to help them. And I think that's the most important. But the second thing is you got to follow up, right? And that's another thing that I miss. I don't know how many times I would give my team a task and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done, and then just not follow up. Right. And so then they don't even feel like they need to get it done because they know I'm not going to follow up. And, but also it's like, they don't have that, like, that constant little nudge to be like, hey, where are we at on this project? And recognizing that I care about this project getting done. Right. And, if they don't sense that I care, then why would they care?
Sure. Yeah. And, we have there's an old saying in the military, it's called selection is a never ending process. And it means you never fully arrive. And another way of saying it sometimes is the famous from naval special warfare is the only easy day was yesterday. Right. And I think a lot of leaders think that they've arrived and they don't have to try anymore. And they expect others to work for them. And it's kind of like that old, king, prince or serf. Right. And sometimes we just treat people as almost below us, and people sniff that out so easily these days. And when you don't treat people with value, right, they're not gonna pull for you. And so we have the saying in the military, follow me, especially the special operations community, or the ranger community, infantry community, what have you. The idea would be you don't expect anyone to do what you aren't willing to do yourself, right? And so Fort Bragg is home of the Airborne Special Operations Forces. A young leader shows up, and if coming from Fort Benning or wherever, the first thing they'll do is they'll look at your left shoulder and they'll see if you're a ranger. Right? They want to know if you've earned the tab, if you're ranger qualified. And the reason is because they've done that, and they're looking to see if you've done that, right? Because that means when you get in front of your men, your team, that you've proven that you're willing to do the hard work.
Yeah.
And so it's so important. I mean, it's not go before me, it's follow me, right? And so leaders have to be willing to roll up their sleeves and put the kind of emotional and relational equity into a business so that it performs long term.
Yeah, 100%. And now it's like, as we're doing the podcast here, it's like this has never been a more important time for companies, individuals that are leading their companies, or companies that have leaders, because of this, like, this great resignment, or whatever we're calling it, the great resign, we're calling it, is everyone's leaving their jobs. I mean, in my friend group alone, just like kind of counting off the top of my head of 10 friends, 6 of them have left their jobs in the last 2 years. Right. And it's like, this is what's happening in the world. And if you are not on top, this is the next evolution of business. Marketing, promotions, and all that stuff is important. But if you can't keep people, you can't make money. Right. And so this has never been more important than it is at this point. Is like learning how to develop and become an amazing leader is going to be critical for the survival of any business in the next 10 years, especially with respect to, the way the internet's going, and people more and more are realizing they can do whatever it is they want to do, right, and make money at it. I mean, like, there's there's Instagram accounts about, like, a tiny little clay doll. It's called The Tiny Chef, and I follow it. It's hilarious. But, like, this person just had a knack for doing claymation, and now like, it was a side hobby, and I'm assuming they had a job that they have now quit and are doing this full time, right? And so it's like, this is the reality of the world that we're living in now. And if you don't lead your people, if they won't follow you to the end of the earth, whether they're getting paid or not, then you're going to find yourself in big trouble. So I definitely think it's more important than ever. And then I also want to talk about that point that you just made about follow me. Instead of the one thing I think I had talked about this before was, well, how can I go and do all of the things, or why would I go do the things? And then, sorry, if I'm going to pay them, why would I do it? Like, I'm paying these people to do it. And so, like, I could, 100%, I could do that job, and then my mindset was, I could probably do it better than they could do it. Right. But part of like letting go of that control is like allowing them to make mistakes and step back. But, if you're the leader. If you want to be in charge of everything, you have to be in charge of nothing. I think that's a quote that you told me, right? Or it's from a book. I can't remember, but anyways, I'm sure you've heard it. And so in order to do that, you have to keep focused on I can clean the toilets at the bar, but if I do that, that's less time I spend on marketing, right? So what is you had given me some advice on that one before. I don't know if you recall it or not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's the general premise is, as a leader, Jocko Willink talks about this in his book, Extreme Ownership, is you've got to see the bigger picture, right? He called, and so whether you call it going from 0 to 50,000 foot or just seeing the whole, it's almost like in the movies when they show someone having an out of body experience and they're sort of hovering above themselves in the picture, whether it's like a crash scene or whatever. Well, that's what a leader must do. To your point, cleaning the toilets is fine if that's what's important, right? If it's 5 minutes before you're having a big, you're hosting a big event at your restaurant and the toilets aren't clean, absolutely. I mean, you're putting the gloves on, doing whatever it has to be done, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But long term, that means you're only focused on the tactical level or the doing level of your business, and it means that you're in the engine room of the ship, no one's steering the ship. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so
that's a great analogy.
And so there's a season where you got to get the engine back and going. Sure. But if you're living your life where you're having to run from the bridge to the engine room back and forth, you're missing it. As a captain of the ship, as a leader, your job is to steer, direct, lead, influence, motivate. It's not to fix the engines. And so many people, and it doesn't matter if they're in small business or they're at the corporate level, they're stuck in thinking themselves as doers. And the truth is, as a leader, your ethos should be by, with, and through. You're working through people to accomplish something.
Gotcha.
You're not doing it for them, because otherwise, why have them on board, right?
Yes. And then I think the other point that you made to me before was if they are questioning whether you're not doing anything, they're doing all the work, then every now and then it's okay to get put the gloves on, the work boots on, and go do the work and show them, hey, I can do this too. It's but I brought you on to, so that you can do it, so I can focus on making sure that we keep paying the bills, kind of thing, right? Or whatever that might not be the proper messaging, but they have to understand that you will get down and dirty with them every now and then, right? But your role has to be, like you say, at the helm of the ship.
And part of that's just having the conversation. And again, there are moments when you should hop in the kitchen, like if it's a restaurant, hop in the kitchen and spend a little time there, on the stove or the oven or whatever you guys are doing. That's great. But those are really relational building times. And if the restaurant or store requires you to do that, long term, you're in trouble. And even if you think about manufacturing and management and dealing with people that are going through mergers and acquisitions, they're and a lot of times, especially when it comes to businesses that are buying other businesses that are trying to grow and scale, sometimes they get themselves into so much trouble because they buy the business because it's running effectively, and they've forgotten that it was a 15 to 20-year run to get the business where it was. And just because you buy it, oftentimes you get rid of some of the leadership structure, right? You're going to look at cost saving and different things, and all of a sudden you've cut away parts of the culture, and you've cut away some of the relationships. And so if you're doing that, you have to invest in people and invest in those relationships. We like to talk about in the terms of rock climbing or mountain climbing, mountaineering. When you first jump into that world, it looks like, someone's just effortlessly climbing something. But the truth is, when you're starting that whole climbing scene, we were always taught to always have 3 points of contact. And I love that idea of 3 points of contact, because if you think about it, just paying them a good wage is just 1 point of contact. Okay. Then the next step is, do they have good relationships with their boss specifically? If they do, if you're influencing others, if you're building, if you're establishing relationship like you talked about, that's the second point of contact. But then also the third point of contact is needed, and that's developing others. And so the one question you need to ask as a leader is not how good am I influencing others? That's important. Am I serving others? Also important. But really that third point of contact, how are you developing your people? How are you investing training, educating your people, both individually, so they learn how to take responsibility, that they get freed up from the junk they're dealing with, but also can they perform in the workplace? And so, really, leadership is also appreciation, and you have to appreciate your people enough to invest in them, or long term, they're just not going to perform.
Yeah, and I think the big thing about that is, and this is what we'll leave it on, is as business owners, especially management, we get into this mindset that our employees owe us something in some way because we're paying them, and employees have the reverse mindset that we owe them something of managers because they're working for us. So it's like you get into this like tug of war kind of situation, and it ends up building resentment. But if you have that third point of contact, which is essentially, you call it appreciation, I would call it gratitude. If you have gratitude first for that this person that's coming to work for you, and the gratitude is going to end up being it's going to be forced upon us, because if you don't have gratitude for people, they're going to leave you, right? So if they don't feel that you're grateful that they're there, then you're going to have issues. So yeah, I definitely love that 3 points of contact, and with appreciation and gratitude being at the forefront, because if you flip that script, that your employees don't owe you, you owe them, you're grateful for having them, it changes everything, right? It's like a recontextualization of how you see the people that are underneath you. So yeah, all super important stuff, Mickey, and I'm looking forward to doing part 3 and expanding on all of this even more. So thanks for taking the time to coming on, and make sure you like and subscribe so you can watch part 3 with Mickey and I.